The knock came at exactly 4 a.m. Three precise strikes that shattered the silence of Caleb Reed's apartment like gunfire. He jolted upright, heart hammering, already calculating worst-case scenarios. Fire alarm malfunction? Building emergency? Police? But when he stumbled to the door and peered through the peephole, his breath caught in his throat. Standing in the fluorescent-lit hallway, mascara streaked down her face, designer heels dangling from one hand, was Victoria Hale. His CEO, the woman whose name commanded boardrooms and quarterly reports. The untouchable force who'd never once acknowledged his existence beyond approving his department's budget. She looked up at the peephole as if she could see straight through to his stunned expression, and when her lips moved, forming words he couldn't hear through the door, something in her eyes looked irrevocably broken. Before we dive into this story about the night that changed everything, I want you to come along on this journey with me until the very end. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel and connecting with all of you. Now, let's get back to that impossible moment when two separate worlds collided in a silent hallway at 4 in the morning. Pa Caleb's hand trembled slightly as he unlocked the deadbolt. Years of single parenthood had trained him to assess threats quickly, to protect first and question later, but nothing in his careful, measured life had prepared him for this. He opened the door slowly, keeping his body in the gap, acutely aware that his 8-year-old daughter Lily was asleep just down the hall. "Mr. Reed." Victoria's voice cracked on his name, and the formality of it, after what he was witnessing, felt absurd. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go." She swayed slightly, and Caleb's instinct overrode his confusion. He reached out to steady her elbow, and that simple touch seemed to break something inside her. Her shoulders collapsed inward, and a sound escaped her throat that was half laugh, half sob. "I can't believe I'm here," she whispered. "I can't believe I just—" She looked down at herself as if seeing her disheveled state for the first time. The elegant black dress that probably cost more than Caleb's monthly rent was wrinkled and askew. One stocking had a run from ankle to thigh. Her carefully constructed veneer of control had shattered so completely that standing before him wasn't Victoria Hale, CEO of Meridian Solutions. It was just a woman who looked utterly lost. Caleb glanced down the hallway, checking for witnesses, then made a decision that would alter the trajectory of both their lives. "Come inside." She stepped over the threshold into his modest living room, and the contrast was striking. Where her corner office overlooked the city with floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist luxury, his apartment was cramped and lived in. Lily's drawings covered the refrigerator. A basket of laundry sat unfolded on the couch. The coffee table held a half-completed jigsaw puzzle of the solar system they'd been working on for weeks. Victoria stood in the center of the room, still clutching her heels, looking like she'd been dropped into an alien landscape. "I shouldn't have come here. This was a mistake." "Sit down before you fall down," Caleb said quietly, moving the laundry basket to clear the couch. "I'll make coffee." "You don't have to, Ms. Hale." He kept his voice gentle but firm, the same tone he used with Lily when she was overwhelmed. "Sit down." Something in his calm authority made her obey. She sank onto the couch, finally setting her shoes on the floor, and pulled her knees up to her chest in a gesture so vulnerable it made Caleb's chest tighten. This wasn't the woman who'd stood at the podium during last quarter's all-hands meeting, dissecting profit margins with surgical precision. This was someone completely unraveled. He moved to the kitchen, really just an alcove separated by a breakfast bar, and started the coffee maker. The familiar ritual gave him time to think, to process what was happening. In 3 years at Meridian Solutions, he'd seen Victoria Hale exactly 14 times, always from a distance. She was the kind of executive who existed in a different atmosphere, breathing rarefied air that didn't mix with the oxygen of mid-level accountants like himself. "How do you take it?" he asked. "Black? Strong." Her voice was muffled, and when he looked over, he saw she'd buried her face against her knees. Caleb poured 2 mugs, added cream and sugar to his own, and carried them to the coffee table. He sat in the armchair across from her, giving her space, and waited. Years of parenting had taught him that sometimes silence was the most powerful tool. People needed room to find their own words. Victoria lifted her head slowly, accepting the mug with both hands like it was the only solid thing in her world. She took a sip, grimaced at the heat, then took another. When she finally spoke, her voice was steadier but still threaded with something raw. I was on a date. Caleb raised his eyebrows but said nothing. A very expensive, very carefully planned date with Marcus Beaumont. Do you know who that is? The venture capitalist? Caleb had read about him in the business section. Beaumont Capital had just closed a $500 million fund. That's him. Victoria's laugh was bitter. We've been circling each other at industry events for months. Finally, tonight, last night, we had dinner at Oriole. He ordered a bottle of wine that cost more than most people's car payments and spent 2 hours telling me about his portfolio companies. I smiled. I laughed at his jokes. I played the game perfectly. She paused, staring into her coffee. Then he suggested we go back to his place. And when I said I wasn't ready for that, do you know what he said? Caleb remained silent, letting her continue. He said, "Come on, Victoria. We're both adults here. We both know how this works. You don't climb to where we are without understanding transactions." Her hands tightened around the mug. Transactions. Like I was a merger he was trying to close, like the whole evening was just foreplay for a deal. "What did you do?" Caleb asked quietly. I stood up, grabbed my coat, and walked out of the restaurant. He actually called after me that I was being unnecessarily dramatic. She shook her head. I started walking because I couldn't stand the thought of waiting for a car service, couldn't stand the idea of going back to my empty apartment and staring at the walls until sunrise. So I just walked for hours, through neighborhoods I'd never been in, past buildings I'd never noticed, and somewhere around 3:30, I realized I was 6 blocks from here. How did you know where I live? The question came out before Caleb could stop it. Victoria met his eyes for the first time since entering his apartment, and there was something devastatingly honest in her gaze. I know where all my senior staff live, Mr. Reed. It's in the employee database. But I also know you because... She trailed off, then seemed to make a decision. 3 months ago, you were leaving work at the same time I was. We were waiting for the elevator, and your phone rang. You answered it, and I heard you talking to your daughter. She was upset about something at school, and you spent 5 minutes calming her down, telling her she was brave and smart, and that tomorrow would be better. You never once looked impatient or bothered. You spoke to her like she was the most important person in your world. Caleb remembered that call. Lily had been crying because another kid had made fun of her homemade lunch. He'd completely forgotten Victoria had been standing there. When you hung up, Victoria continued, you looked at me and apologized for the personal call. Do you remember what I said? He shook his head. I said, no need to apologize. But what I was thinking was that I'd just witnessed something I'd never experienced in my entire life. Someone being loved unconditionally, no performance required, no transaction necessary. And I've thought about that moment every single day since. The confession hung between them, so personal and unexpected that Caleb felt the ground shift beneath his carefully ordered world. Ms. Hale, Victoria, she interrupted, please. I'm sitting in your living room at 4 a.m. looking like I lost a fight with my own life. I think we're past titles. Victoria, he repeated, testing the name in his mouth. It felt dangerous and intimate. Why did you come here? She was quiet for a long moment, and when she answered, her voice was almost inaudible. Because when I was walking through those streets feeling more alone than I've ever felt, even surrounded by millions of people, the only person I could think of who might understand was you. You don't know me. Don't I? She set down her coffee and looked at him directly. I know you're a single father. I know you never miss one of your daughter's school events, even when it means rearranging your schedule. I know you eat lunch at your desk every day because the money you'd spend in the cafeteria goes into her college fund instead. I know you turned down a promotion 6 months ago because it would have required too much travel. I know, her voice cracked. I know you made choices that I was too afraid to make. Caleb felt something unlock in his chest, some door he'd kept firmly sealed since his ex-wife had walked out when Lily was 2 years old. What choices? To choose love over ambition. To choose being present over being impressive. To choose... She gestured around his small apartment. This, a real life, instead of the empty monument I've built. Your life isn't empty, Caleb said, though he didn't know if he believed it. You've built an incredible company. You employ over 3,000 people. That matters. Victoria's smile was sad. Does it? When I go home today, to my penthouse apartment with its view of the river and its designer furniture, who will be there? Who will call me because they need to hear my voice? Who loves me for who I am instead of what I can do for them? She looked away. No one. The answer is no one. The vulnerability in her words resonated with a loneliness Caleb knew intimately. There were nights after Lily was asleep when the silence of his apartment felt crushing. Nights when he wondered if he'd ever find someone who understood that his daughter came first, always, and still wanted to be part of his life anyway. I chose Lily over everything, he said softly. And I'd make that choice again every single day. But pretending it wasn't hard, that there weren't sacrifices, that would be a lie. Victoria's eyes found his again. What did you sacrifice? Caleb hesitated, then decided that if she could be this honest, so could he. My marriage, obviously. Sarah couldn't handle the reality of parenthood. She wanted the Instagram version, the cute photos and family adventures, but not the 2 a.m. fevers or the tantrums in grocery stores or the profound responsibility of shaping another human being. When Lily was 2, Sarah told me she felt like she was drowning, that she'd lost herself. 3 days later, she was gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. She did us both a favor by leaving instead of staying and resenting us. He paused. But I also sacrificed my social life, my hobbies, any chance of dating. I sacrificed the career trajectory I'd imagined. I could have been a CFO somewhere by now if I'd been willing to put in the hours and take the risks. I sacrificed spontaneity and freedom. Some days I sacrificed sleep and sanity. He managed a small smile. But when I look at Lily, when I see who she's becoming, I know it was worth it. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She gives my life purpose. Victoria's expression turned wistful. I used to think my company was my purpose. I built it from nothing, you know. I was 26, fresh out of business school with an idea and terrifying amounts of student debt. Everyone told me I'd fail. They said I was too young, too inexperienced, too female. She laughed without humor. So I worked myself to the bone to prove them wrong. 90-hour weeks, no vacations, no relationships that lasted longer than a few months because I couldn't give them the time they deserved. And I won. I built a successful company. I proved them all wrong. But, Caleb prompted, but somewhere along the way I forgot why I was doing it. The company stopped being a means to an end and became the end itself. And now I'm 41 years old, sitting in a stranger's apartment at dawn, realizing I've spent 15 years building a monument to my own loneliness. I'm not a stranger, Caleb said gently. You knocked on my door. That means something. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. What does it mean? It means you're still fighting, still searching for something real. That takes courage. A tear escaped, tracking down her cheek, and she didn't wipe it away. I don't feel very courageous right now. I feel like a mess. Courage isn't the absence of fear or pain. It's showing up anyway. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. You could have gone home and pretended tonight never happened. You could have armored up, gone back to being untouchable. Instead, you're here, being honest about what hurts. That's braver than most people ever manage. Victoria did wipe her tears then, quickly, almost angrily. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just a guy who's been broken enough times to recognize the pieces. He offered a small smile. And I've had a very patient 8-year-old teaching me that it's okay to be imperfect. As if summoned by the mention, a small voice called out from down the hallway. Daddy? Caleb's heart jumped. He'd hoped Lily would sleep through this surreal encounter, but of course she'd sensed something was different. She had an uncanny ability to detect disruptions in their routine. I'm here, sweetheart, he called back. Everything's okay. The door to Lily's room creaked open, and she emerged in her favorite purple pajamas, clutching the worn stuffed elephant she'd had since she was a baby. Her dark curls were wild from sleep, and she was rubbing her eyes with one small fist. Then she saw Victoria, and she froze. Caleb stood quickly, moving to intercept his daughter before she could be frightened by the stranger in their living room, but Victoria surprised him. She set down her coffee and stood up slowly, smoothing her wrinkled dress, and when she spoke to Lily, her voice was gentle and warm. "Hello. You must be Lily. I'm Victoria. I'm sorry for disturbing your sleep." Lily looked from Victoria to her father, her 8-year-old mind clearly trying to process why a fancy-looking woman was in their apartment before sunrise. "Are you okay?" she asked Victoria with that direct honesty only children possessed. "You look sad." Victoria's composure wavered, and she crouched down to Lily's eye level, which made her wrinkled designer dress ride up awkwardly. She didn't seem to notice or care. "I am a little sad," she admitted, "but your father has been very kind to me, which is helping." "Daddy's the best at helping when people are sad," Lily said matter-of-factly. "He makes hot chocolate and sits with you until you feel better. Do you want hot chocolate?" Caleb felt his throat tighten with love for his empathetic, generous-hearted daughter. "Lily, it's 4 in the morning. Way too early for hot chocolate." "But she's sad," Lily protested, as if this trumped all time-based conventions. Victoria laughed, and it was the first genuine sound of happiness Caleb had heard from her all night. "Thank you, Lily. That's very sweet, but I think I should probably let you both get back to sleep." "You don't have to go," Caleb said, surprising himself. "I mean, if you're not ready, you can stay until it's light out. We usually get up around 6 anyway." Victoria stood up, and he could see her considering it, weighing the appropriateness against her need. Lily made the decision for them both by taking Victoria's hand with complete trust. "You can help me and Daddy finish our puzzle," she announced. "We've been working on it for 3 weeks, and we still can't find all the edge pieces. Daddy says that's because I keep putting them in my toy box by accident, but I think some of them might have gone to space." "To space?" Victoria's lips quirked into an almost smile. "It's a puzzle of the solar system," Lily explained seriously. "So the pieces probably wanted to go home to their real planets." And just like that, the tension in the room dissolved. Victoria allowed herself to be led to the coffee table, where she sat on the floor in her expensive dress, and Lily began explaining the puzzle with the kind of detailed enthusiasm only an 8-year-old could muster at 4 in the morning. Caleb watched them for a moment, this impossible scene, his daughter and his CEO searching for puzzle pieces together, and felt the world shift again. He went to make more coffee, and when he returned, Victoria was actually smiling, really smiling, as Lily told her about each planet's characteristics. Mercury is the closest to the sun, so it's super hot during the day but super cold at night because it doesn't have an atmosphere to hold in the heat, Lily lectured, holding up a puzzle piece. And Venus is the hottest planet even though it's not the closest because of its thick atmosphere that traps heat. It rains acid there. Acid? Victoria looked appropriately impressed. "That sounds terrible." "It would melt you instantly," Lily said cheerfully. "But Mars is cold and has 2 tiny moons named Phobos and Deimos, which means fear and panic in Greek. Isn't that cool?" "Very cool." Victoria found a piece and carefully fitted it into place. "You know a lot about space." "My daddy taught me. He knows everything about everything." Caleb snorted softly from the armchair. "I definitely don't know everything, Lilybug." "You know all the important stuff," Lily said loyally. Then she turned back to Victoria with sudden intensity. "Are you and my daddy friends?" The question hung in the air, complicated and loaded with implications neither adult knew how to address. Victoria glanced at Caleb, something vulnerable and uncertain in her eyes, and he realized with startling clarity that he wanted the answer to be yes. He wanted to be friends with this woman who'd shown up broken and honest at his door. He wanted to know more about the person behind the CEO mask. He wanted... "I'd like to be," Victoria said softly, still looking at Caleb. "If your daddy thinks that's okay." Lily looked at her father expectantly, and Caleb felt the weight of the moment. He could shut this down now, could maintain the professional distance that common sense dictated. She was his boss. This was inappropriate by any corporate standard, and yet... "I think that would be okay," he heard himself say. Lily beamed. "Good. Because you seem nice, and Daddy doesn't have enough friends. He mostly just hangs out with me and Uncle James always wants to watch boring sports." "Lily," Caleb warned, but he was fighting a smile. Victoria laughed again, and this time it reached her eyes. For the next hour, as the sky outside shifted from black to deep blue to the first hints of pink, The three of them worked on the puzzle. Lily chattered constantly, filling the space with stories about school and her best friend Mia and the science fair project she was planning. Victoria listened with genuine interest, asking questions that showed she was really hearing what Lily said, not just humoring a child. Caleb watched them interact, and something inside him that had been frozen for years began to thaw. He'd built such careful walls around his life, convinced that protecting Lily meant keeping everyone else at arm's length. But seeing his daughter's joy at having someone new to share her enthusiasm with, seeing Victoria's transformation from the broken woman who'd arrived at his door to someone animated and present, it challenged everything he'd told himself about safety and risk. When Lily finally started yawning, Caleb checked his watch and realized it was nearly 6. "All right, Bug, time to get ready for school." "Already?" Lily protested, but she was drooping with exhaustion. "You've been up for 2 hours in the middle of the night," Caleb reminded her. "Go get dressed, and I'll make breakfast." Lily hugged Victoria with the unself-conscious affection of childhood. "Thank you for helping with the puzzle. Will you come back?" Victoria's eyes met Caleb's over Lily's head, asking permission, seeking guidance. He nodded, just barely, and her smile was like sunrise. "I'd love to," Victoria told Lily, "if your father says it's okay." Lily released her and scampered down the hallway, leaving Caleb and Victoria alone in the living room with the half-finished puzzle and the weight of what had just transpired. Victoria stood slowly, her joints stiff from sitting on the floor. Her dress was hopelessly wrinkled, her makeup still smeared, but she looked more alive than she had when she'd arrived. "I should go. Let you get Lily ready for school." "Victoria." Caleb wasn't sure what he wanted to say. "Thank you" felt inadequate. This was complicated, felt too obvious. She saved him from fumbling. "Thank you, Caleb, for opening the door, for not calling building security, for letting me be just a person for a few hours." "You can be just a person here any time," he said, and meant it. Her eyes searched his face, looking for something. Sincerity, permission, understanding. "This can't be. At work, we have to—" "I know," he assured her. "Professional boundaries, I get it. But here?" Her voice was tentative, hopeful. "Could I come back? Not as your boss, just as someone who wants to finish that puzzle and hear more about acid rain on Venus?" Caleb felt his carefully controlled life crack open just a little wider. "Yes, you can come back." She nodded, blinking rapidly against fresh tears. "Okay. Good. That's okay." She gathered her shoes and her coat, and Caleb walked her to the door. In the hallway, with the fluorescent lights still buzzing overhead, she turned back to him. "Caleb, what you said about courage, about showing up even when you're scared or hurting, I'm going to try to remember that." "Good." He leaned against the doorframe, suddenly reluctant to let her leave. "And Victoria, you're stronger than you think. Anyone who can build what you've built, survive what you've survived, and still have the courage to be vulnerable, that's extraordinary." Her smile was soft and sad and grateful all at once. "We'll see if I can hold on to this when I'm back in my office pretending to have all the answers." "You don't have to have all the answers. Nobody does. Tell that to my board of directors. Tell them yourself. I think you might surprise yourself with what happens when you stop performing and start being honest." She considered this, then nodded slowly. "Maybe. One day." She paused. "See you at work, Mr. Reed?" "See you at work, Miss Hale?" The formality was protective, a return to roles that made sense in the daylight world. But they both smiled as they said it, acknowledging the absurdity, the impossibility, the truth underneath. Caleb watched her walk down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the industrial carpet, her heels still dangling from her hand. She didn't look back, but at the elevator she straightened her shoulders, took a deep breath, and pressed the button with something that looked like resolve. When he closed his door, Lily was standing in the hallway, dressed for school, watching him with knowing eyes that seemed far older than 8. "She's nice, Daddy." "Yeah, she is. And pretty." "Lily? And sad like you get sometimes when you think I'm asleep." Caleb's breath caught. He thought he'd hidden that from her, the loneliness that crept in during the quiet hours. "Bug, I'm not—" "It's okay to be sad sometimes," Lily said wisely. And it's okay to have friends who understand. That's what you always tell me. She hugged him then, wrapping her small arms around his waist, and Caleb held his daughter close and wondered when exactly she'd become so perceptive. "How did you get so smart?" he asked, his voice rough. "You taught me," she said simply. "Now come on, I want pancakes." As Caleb made breakfast and helped Lily pack her school bag and went through their normal morning routine, he felt the aftershocks of Victoria's 4 a.m. knock rippling through his carefully ordered life. He'd spent 6 years building walls, convincing himself that solitude was safety, that distance was protection. But in the space of 2 hours, a broken woman with mascara-streaked cheeks and bare feet had reminded him of something he'd almost forgotten. That connection, real connection, was worth the risk of being hurt. He didn't know what would come of it. Didn't know if Victoria would actually come back or if the harsh light of day would make her regret her vulnerability. Didn't know if he was brave enough to let someone in past the defenses he'd built. Didn't know if they could navigate the impossible complexity of boss and employee, loneliness and longing, professional distance and personal truth. But for the first time in 6 years, as he watched Lily eat her pancakes and chatter about her day ahead, Caleb felt something he'd almost forgotten: hope. And that terrifying, tentative feeling was enough to make him believe that maybe, just maybe, the 4 a.m. knock wasn't an ending at all. Maybe it was the beginning of everything. The morning passed in a blur of spreadsheets and budget reviews, but Caleb found his concentration fracturing every few minutes. He'd catch himself staring at his computer screen without seeing the numbers, replaying the surreal hours before dawn. Victoria's tear-streaked face, Lily's innocent acceptance of a stranger in their home. The weight of that moment when he'd said yes, she could come back. Around 10:30, his desk phone rang. Internal line. He didn't recognize the extension. "Caleb Reed," he answered, professional and detached. "Mr. Reed, this is Jennifer from Ms. Hale's office." The executive assistant's voice was crisp and efficient. "Ms. Hale would like to see you in her office at 11. Does that work with your schedule?" Caleb's heart kicked against his ribs. So it was happening already, the inevitable conversation about boundaries and propriety, the careful corporate distancing. "Yes, that's fine." "Excellent. I'll let her know." The line went dead, and Caleb sat back in his chair, his mind racing. 23 minutes. He had 23 minutes to prepare for whatever was coming. He tried to focus on the quarterly reconciliation in front of him, but the numbers swam meaninglessly across the screen. At exactly 11, he stood outside Victoria's corner office, the same space he'd only ever glimpsed from the outside during company events. The glass walls offered a panoramic view of the city, and through them he could see Victoria at her desk, her posture rigid and perfect, her expression unreadable. She was wearing a different dress than the wrinkled black one from this morning, a tailored navy suit that screamed authority and control. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she'd never been anything other than completely composed. Jennifer gestured for him to enter, and Victoria looked up as he approached. For one fraction of a second, her mask slipped, and he saw vulnerability flash across her features. Then it was gone, replaced by professional courtesy. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. Please, sit down." He settled into the chair across from her massive desk, acutely aware of the power dynamics at play. This was her territory, her domain. Whatever fragile connection had formed at 4 in the morning felt impossibly distant here. Victoria folded her hands on the desk, her expression carefully neutral. "I want to address what happened this morning." "Of course." Caleb kept his voice even, giving nothing away. She studied him for a long moment, and he wondered if she was searching for judgment, or pity, or awkwardness. He tried to show her none of those things. Finally she spoke, and her words surprised him. "I owe you an apology. I put you in an incredibly uncomfortable position by showing up at your home unannounced. It was inappropriate and unprofessional, and I'm sorry." "You don't need to apologize," Caleb said carefully. "You were clearly in distress. I'm glad I could help." "Still." She straightened papers that were already perfectly aligned. "There are protocols, hierarchies. I'm your boss, and I showed up at your apartment in the middle of the night. That crosses lines that exist for good reasons." He waited, sensing there was more. Victoria met his eyes, and this time the vulnerability stayed. "But I also want to thank you for not making me feel foolish or weak. for treating me like a person instead of a title, for letting Lily, her voice softened, for letting your daughter share her puzzle and her stories. That meant more to me than you probably realize. She enjoyed it too. She asked about you at breakfast. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Surprise, pleasure, longing. Did she? She wanted to know if you were feeling better. And she reminded me that we need to buy more edge pieces because apparently the solar system ones really did go to space. Victoria's laugh was quiet but genuine. She's remarkable. So smart and kind. You've done an incredible job raising her. I've done my best, Caleb said simply. They sat in silence for a moment, and Caleb could feel the weight of everything unspoken pressing against the boundaries of professional decorum. Finally, he decided to risk honesty. What happens now? He asked. Victoria looked startled by the directness. What do you mean? You said you wanted to come back, to finish the puzzle, but now, here, with all the corporate structure around us, do you still want that? Or was it just something you said in the moment? She stood abruptly and walked to the window, her arms crossed over her chest. When she spoke, her voice was quieter. I don't know. I want to say yes. I want to believe I can separate who I am here from who I was in your living room. But I also know how complicated that would be. Caleb rose and moved to stand beside her, close enough to talk without being overheard, but maintaining respectful distance. It would be complicated. You're right about that. But complicated doesn't always mean impossible. Doesn't it? She turned to face him. I'm your boss, Caleb. Anything that happens between us, even friendship, creates potential conflicts of interest. It could affect your career, your reputation. People would talk. They'd make assumptions. Let them. Her eyes widened. You say that now, but you don't understand what this world is like. The gossip, the politics, the way people weaponize relationships for leverage. You're right. I don't understand that world. But I understand that sometimes the right thing is also the hard thing. He paused. This morning, you told me you'd spent 15 years building a monument to your own loneliness. Is that really what you want to keep doing? Victoria flinched like he'd struck her. That's not fair. It's completely fair. You showed up at my door because you were brave enough to admit you needed connection. Now you're talking yourself out of it because it's professionally inconvenient. Caleb softened his tone. I'm not saying there shouldn't be boundaries. Of course there should. At work, we're colleagues, nothing more. But outside of work, in my home, where titles don't matter, why can't we just be two people who understand what loneliness feels like? She searched his face, and he could see her wrestling with herself. The woman who'd built an empire through ruthless focus was at war with the woman who'd sat on his floor at dawn, helping his daughter find puzzle pieces. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to be vulnerable with someone and not have it destroy me. None of us do. We just figure it out as we go. Victoria smiled sadly. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it might be worth it. She turned back to the window, and they stood side by side looking out at the city sprawling below them. After a long moment, she spoke again. Lily asked if I'd come back. What did you tell her? I told her you were welcome any time, but that it was up to you. And if I do come back? What are we, Caleb? Friends? Colleagues who occasionally socialize? What do we call this? He considered carefully. How about we don't call it anything yet? We just let it be what it is. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and something in her expression shifted. When did you get so wise about relationships? I thought you said you'd been out of the game for 6 years. I have been. But Lily's taught me that not everything needs a label or a plan. Sometimes you just have to trust people and see what happens. Victoria's phone buzzed on her desk, shattering the moment. She glanced at it and sighed. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. Board members who definitely expect me to have all the answers. Then you should go be impressive and terrifying. Is that how you see me? There was something almost hurt in her voice. No, that's how everyone else sees you. I see someone who's trying very hard to figure out how to be happy. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you should come back. Lily's already planning to tell you about Neptune's storms. Apparently they're even more violent than Earth's hurricanes. Victoria's smile was small but real. I wouldn't want to miss that. Thursday night, around 7, we usually do pizza and puzzle time before bed. She nodded, and Caleb saw her hands tremble slightly before she clasped them together. Thursday at 7. I'll be there. As he left her office and walked back through the corridors to his desk, Caleb felt like he was navigating two different realities. Here in the office, with its glass walls and corporate efficiency, Victoria Hale was untouchable and powerful. But he'd seen behind that mask. He knew about the woman who'd stood in his hallway at 4 in the morning looking utterly lost. And now he was complicit in protecting both versions of her. The rest of the week unfolded with careful normalcy. At work, Victoria was all business, decisive in meetings, sharp in her analysis, commanding in her presence. Caleb caught sight of her a few times from across the office floor, and once their eyes met briefly. She gave him the smallest nod, so subtle anyone else would have missed it. And he understood. Here, we're professional, nothing more. But on Wednesday afternoon, Jennifer from Victoria's office called him again. Mr. Reed, I have a message from Ms. Hale. She wanted me to ask if Lily has any dietary restrictions or allergies. Caleb blinked in surprise. No allergies, though she's not a fan of olives on pizza. Perfect. I'll pass that along, thank you. Jennifer hung up before Caleb could ask why Victoria needed to know. Thursday arrived with agonizing slowness. Caleb found himself distracted at work, checking the clock repeatedly, second-guessing everything. What if this was a mistake? What if Victoria's presence disrupted the careful peace he'd built with Lily? What if he was opening a door that would be impossible to close? But Lily's excitement was infectious. She'd cleaned her room without being asked, set out her favorite books to show Victoria, and insisted they finish the difficult section of the puzzle so there would be something fun left to work on together. At 6:45, Caleb checked his reflection in the bathroom mirror and felt ridiculous. He'd changed shirts 3 times, settled on a simple navy Henley that Lily said made him look cozy. He'd even considered shaving the stubble he usually left for weekends, then decided that was trying too hard. The knock came at exactly 7 o'clock, and Lily raced to the door before Caleb could stop her. I'll get it. She flung the door open, and Victoria stood in the hallway looking nothing like the CEO from Monday's board meeting. She wore dark jeans and a soft gray sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders, minimal makeup. She looked younger, more uncertain, and she was carrying 2 large paper bags that smelled incredible. Hi, Lily, she said, smiling nervously. I hope I'm not late. You're perfect, Lily announced. What's in the bags? Pizza, and I wasn't sure what kind everyone liked, so I got 3 different ones. But I made sure none of them had olives. Lily's eyes went wide. You remembered? Of course I remembered. Victoria's gaze moved past Lily to Caleb, seeking approval, checking if she'd overstepped. Caleb felt warmth spread through his chest. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. She stepped inside, and Lily immediately took one of the bags from her. Besides, I figured since I'm crashing your pizza night, I should at least contribute. They settled around the coffee table, sitting on the floor the way Lily preferred, and opened the pizza boxes. Victoria had brought pepperoni, Hawaiian, and a vegetable combination that looked gourmet. There were also fancy sodas and, Caleb noticed with amusement, a small container of high-end gelato. Someone did their research, he murmured, as Lily dove into explanations about which pizza was which. Victoria met his eyes. I might have asked Jennifer to find out what 8-year-olds typically enjoy. And the gelato? That's for the adults. I figured we deserve something special too. As they ate, Lily dominated the conversation, telling Victoria about her week at school with the kind of detail only a child could muster. Victoria listened with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments, treating Lily like she was the most interesting person in the room. Caleb watched them interact and felt something in his chest loosen. For 6 years, he'd believed that protecting Lily meant keeping their world small and controlled. But seeing her light up with someone new, someone who clearly cared, he realized he might have been protecting her from connection as much as from harm. After dinner, they moved to the puzzle. Victoria kicked off her shoes and tucked her feet under her, completely relaxed in a way Caleb had never seen at the office. Lily showed her the progress they'd made, explaining her theory about Jupiter's great red spot with enthusiasm. It's a storm that's been going for hundreds of years, Lily said. Can you imagine? A storm older than anyone's great-great-great-grandparents. That's remarkable, Victoria said, fitting a piece into place. It makes our problems seem pretty small in comparison, doesn't it? That's what Daddy always says. He says when I'm worried about something, I should remember how big the universe is and how most problems are just small moments that pass. Victoria glanced at Caleb. Your daddy sounds very wise. He is, and he gives the best hugs when you're sad. Do you want one? Lily, Caleb warned, mortified. But Victoria's eyes were shining. You know what? I would love one. Lily immediately wrapped her arms around Victoria, who seemed startled for a moment before returning the embrace. When they pulled apart, Caleb saw Victoria blink rapidly, fighting tears. Thank you, she whispered to Lily. That was exactly what I needed. They worked on the puzzle for another hour, and the conversation flowed easily. Victoria told them about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about her mother who'd worked 3 jobs to support them, about feeling like she had to prove herself every single day. My mom used to say that people like us, people without money or connections, we had to be twice as good to get half as far, Victoria said quietly. So I worked myself to exhaustion trying to be twice as good at everything. Did it work? Lily asked. In some ways. I built a successful company, but I also built a life where I worked so hard at being twice as good that I forgot to just be, happy. Lily frowned, considering this with the seriousness she applied to all important matters. My daddy says that being good at things doesn't matter if you don't have people to share it with. Victoria's voice was thick when she responded. Your daddy is a very smart man. Around 8:30, Lily started yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Caleb gave her the 5-minute warning, and she made Victoria promise to come back next week. Only if your dad says it's okay, Victoria said, looking to Caleb for permission. You're welcome here anytime, he confirmed. After Lily had gone through her bedtime routine and been tucked in, Caleb returned to find Victoria still sitting by the puzzle, but she'd moved to the couch. She'd picked up one of Lily's drawings from the coffee table, a crayon masterpiece of the solar system. She's really talented, Victoria said as Caleb sat down beside her, leaving respectful distance between them. She gets that from her mother. Sarah was an artist. That's one of the few good things Lily inherited from her. Can I ask what happened? You said she left, but you don't have to talk about it if you don't want to. Caleb leaned back, considering how much to share. Then he remembered his own words about vulnerability and decided to trust her with the truth. Sarah was 24 when she got pregnant. We'd only been dating for 6 months. She said she wanted to keep the baby, wanted to try to make it work between us. So we got married quickly, convinced ourselves we could build something real. He paused, the old pain duller now but still present. But Sarah was never cut out for the reality of motherhood. She loved the idea of it, the cute outfits, the baby photos, the family image. But the actual work, the sacrifice, the endless responsibility, it suffocated her. She started going out more, coming home later, disappearing for days at a time. When Lily was 2, Sarah finally admitted she couldn't do it anymore. She said she felt like she was dying inside, that every day was a prison. So she left. That must have been devastating. It was, but not for the reasons you might think. Caleb met Victoria's eyes. I wasn't devastated because I lost Sarah. I'd already lost her long before she physically left. I was devastated because I realized I'd failed at giving Lily the family she deserved. 2 parents who loved her and each other. Stability. The fairy tale. Victoria shook her head. You didn't fail. You gave her something better than a fairy tale. You gave her real love, consistent presence, and a father who chose her above everything else. That's not failure, Caleb. That's heroic. It doesn't feel heroic. Most days it just feels exhausting. That's because real love is exhausting. It's showing up every single day, even when you're tired or lonely or scared. It's putting someone else's needs before your own desires. She stopped, her voice catching. It's what I've never been brave enough to do. Caleb turned to face her fully. What do you mean? Victoria set down Lily's drawing carefully, as if it were precious. I've had relationships, a few serious ones over the years, but every single time it came down to a choice between the relationship and my career, between someone else's needs and my ambitions, I chose myself. I told myself it was about independence, about not compromising who I was. But the truth is, I was just too scared to really love someone, too scared to need them, too scared they'd leave like my father did. Your father left? She nodded, still not looking at him. When I was 7, just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation, no goodbye. My mom never talked about it, but I heard her crying at night for years. And I watched her struggle, working herself to the bone because she had to support us alone. I promised myself I'd never be that vulnerable, never need anyone so much that them leaving could destroy me. So you built walls, fortress walls, impenetrable ones. She finally looked at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. And then you answered your door at 4 a.m, and your daughter offered me hot chocolate, and you both treated me like I was worth caring about, even when I was completely falling apart. And suddenly my fortress doesn't feel like protection anymore. It just feels lonely. Caleb felt the air between them thicken with possibility. They were sitting close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, could smell the subtle scent of her perfume. It would be so easy to reach out, to close the distance, to... He pulled back, creating space. Victoria, I need to be honest with you about something. She stiffened, bracing for rejection. Okay. I haven't been with anyone since Sarah left. 6 years of focusing entirely on Lily, on building a stable life for her. And part of that was about being a good father, but part of it, he forced himself to continue. Part of it was fear. Fear of being hurt again. Fear of bringing someone into our lives who might leave and break Lily's heart. Fear that I'm not enough. That any woman who really knew me would realize I'm just a guy who spends his weekends doing puzzles and going to playgrounds. Caleb, let me finish. He ran a hand through his hair. When you showed up here, when you told me about feeling alone and trapped in your own success, it resonated with me because I understand that feeling. I'm trapped too, just in a different way. And being around you, seeing you with Lily, talking to you like this, it makes me want things I've convinced myself I can't have. Victoria's breath caught. What things? Connection, partnership. Someone who understands both the joy and the exhaustion of building a life worth living. Someone who sees me as more than just Lily's dad or an employee number. He met her eyes. But I also know that wanting those things doesn't make them possible or wise. You're my boss. Getting involved with you could jeopardize everything I've built. And more importantly, Lily's already attached to you. If this went badly, it would hurt her. And I won't let that happen. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything they weren't saying. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. What if it didn't go badly? We can't know that. We can't know anything for certain, but we can choose to be careful, to take our time, to protect Lily while we figure out what this is. She shifted closer, not touching him, but near enough that he could feel her warmth. I'm not asking for a relationship, Caleb. I'm not asking for anything except the chance to keep coming back, to keep being part of this. She gestured around the small apartment. This real life you've built. To keep learning how to be vulnerable without being destroyed by it. And at work? At work, nothing changes. We're professional colleagues. No special treatment, no complications. But here, in this space, we can just be two people who are trying to figure out how to be less lonely. Caleb wanted to say yes. Every cell in his body was pulling toward her, toward the possibility of connection. But he also knew the stakes. I need to think about Lily first, he said firmly. Always. I know. I wouldn't respect you if you didn't. Victoria stood, recognizing that the conversation had reached its natural end. I should go. Let you get some sleep. He walked her to the door, and in the hallway, she turned back to him. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, the same as they had that first night, but everything felt different now. Thank you for tonight, she said. For the pizza and the puzzle and for being honest about what scares you. Not many people are that brave. You were brave first, he reminded her. You knocked on the door. Her smile was soft and genuine. Yeah, I did. Best decision I've made in 15 years. As she walked toward the elevator, Caleb called out, Victoria? She turned. Next Thursday, same time, if you want. Her smile widened, transforming her face. I want. After she left, Caleb stood in his doorway for a long moment, his mind spinning. He was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure, caught between the safety of his carefully controlled life and the dangerous pull of possibility. He checked on Lily, who was fast asleep with her stuffed elephant tucked under her chin. She looked peaceful and content, and Caleb felt the familiar rush of protective love that had defined his entire adult life. But beneath that love was something new. Hope. Terrifying, fragile, and completely undeniable hope that maybe his life could be bigger than he'd allowed it to be. That maybe protecting Lily didn't mean sealing them both away from connection. That maybe, just maybe, the woman who'd knocked on his door at 4 in the morning could find a permanent place in their small, carefully constructed world. He didn't expect the call at 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after Victoria had started coming to their Thursday pizza nights. Caleb was deep in reconciling expense reports when his personal cell phone lit up with Lily's school number, and his stomach immediately dropped. Schools only called during the day when something was wrong. "This is Caleb Reed." "Mr. Reed, this is Principal Morrison at Oakwood Elementary. I'm calling about Lily. She's fine physically," the principal added quickly, hearing his sharp intake of breath. "But we've had an incident and I need you to come pick her up." "What kind of incident?" Caleb was already shutting down his computer, grabbing his jacket. "There was an altercation with another student. I'd prefer to discuss the details in person." The drive to the school took 12 minutes that felt like hours. Caleb's mind raced through possibilities, each worse than the last. Lily wasn't a troublemaker. She was gentle and kind, sometimes too empathetic for her own good. Whatever had happened must have been serious for them to call him out of work. When he arrived, he found Lily sitting in the office's waiting area, her face blotchy from crying, her hands twisted in her lap. The moment she saw him, she burst into fresh tears. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." He crouched in front of her, checking her over for injuries. "Are you hurt? Did someone hurt you?" "No, but Her voice broke. "I pushed Marcus. I didn't mean to push him so hard, but he wouldn't stop and I got so mad and it's okay, Bug. Just breathe." Caleb pulled her into his arms, feeling her small body shake with sobs. Over her head, he saw Principal Morrison standing in the doorway of her office, her expression carefully neutral. "Mr. Reed, if you could step into my office. Lily can wait here with Mrs. Chen." The school secretary, a grandmotherly woman Lily loved, held out her hand. "Come on, sweetie. Let's get you some water and maybe a cookie while your dad talks to Principal Morrison." Lily looked at Caleb with terrified eyes. "Am I in big trouble?" "We'll figure it out together," he promised. "Go with Mrs. Chen. I'll be right back." Inside the principal's office, Caleb sat down and tried to prepare himself for whatever was coming. Principal Morrison settled behind her desk with a sigh. "Let me start by saying that Lily is normally one of our best students. Kind, thoughtful, never causes problems, which is why today's incident was so concerning." "What exactly happened?" "During lunch, there was a confrontation between Lily and Marcus Whitmore. According to several witnesses, Marcus was making comments about Lily's lunch. Apparently, she had leftovers in a container rather than a prepared lunch from home. He called it poor people food and said some other things that were unkind about your financial situation." Caleb felt heat rise in his chest. Marcus Whitmore. He knew that name. The kid's father was some hedge fund manager, and his mother was on the PTA board, always talking about their vacation home in the Hamptons. Principal Morrison continued, "Lily tried to ignore him at first, but Marcus persisted. He started talking about how his family had money for real food and asking why Lily's mom wasn't around to pack her proper lunches. That's when Lily told him to stop. He didn't. And when he reached for her lunch container to throw it away, she pushed him. Hard enough that he fell backward and hit his head on the cafeteria bench." "Is he hurt?" "Minor bump, nothing serious. But Mr. Reed, we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical altercation. I understand Lily was provoked, and that absolutely factors into our decision, but she did initiate physical contact." Caleb's jaw tightened. "What decision?" 3-day suspension, starting tomorrow." 3 days? For defending herself against a bully? I know it seems harsh, but Marcus's parents are already demanding action. They're talking about pressing charges for assault, which is ridiculous. But they have resources and lawyers and... Principal Morrison rubbed her temples. "I'm trying to navigate a complicated situation here. If I don't take this seriously, they'll escalate. But I also know Lily was provoked, which is why it's only 3 days and not more. Caleb forced himself to breathe, to think clearly despite the anger burning through him. What happens to Marcus? Does your zero-tolerance policy apply to verbal bullying? He's receiving a verbal warning and will be moved to a different lunch period. A verbal warning. Caleb's voice was flat. He systematically tormented my daughter about being poor, about not having a mother, tried to destroy her property, and he gets a warning while she gets suspended. Mr. Reed, I understand your frustration. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like the kid whose parents can afford lawyers gets a slap on the wrist while my daughter, who is defending herself, gets punished. He stood, too agitated to sit still. This is exactly the kind of systemic inequality that teaches kids like Marcus they can get away with anything, and kids like Lily that they don't matter. Principal Morrison's expression tightened. I'm doing the best I can in a difficult situation. The Whitmores are already threatening to pull funding for the new library wing. They're influential in this community, and I have to consider the broader implications. The broader implications of teaching children that money buys different rules? Caleb heard his voice rising and tried to rein it in. I'm sorry, but I can't accept that. Lily deserves better. Every kid in this school deserves better. Nevertheless, the decision stands. Lily is suspended for 3 days, effective tomorrow. She can return on Friday. Caleb wanted to argue more, wanted to fight this injustice with everything in him, but he could see it would be pointless. Principal Morrison had made her calculation, weighing the Whitmores' money and influence against one single father's protests. He knew which side would win. Fine, he said tersely. Is there anything else? Just that I hope Lily understands the seriousness of using physical force to resolve conflicts. Even when provoked, violence isn't the answer. The irony wasn't lost on Caleb that the school was using institutional force, suspension, to resolve this conflict, but he bit back the comment. We'll discuss it. Can I take her home now? Of course. Lily was quiet on the drive back to the apartment, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands still twisted in her lap. Caleb wanted to tell her it was okay, that he wasn't angry, but he also knew this was a teaching moment he couldn't waste. When they got inside, he guided her to the couch and sat down beside her. Talk to me, Bug. Tell me everything that happened. Through tears and hiccups, Lily explained. Marcus had been picking on her for weeks, commenting on her clothes, her shoes, the fact that she didn't have the latest gadgets. She'd tried ignoring him like Caleb had taught her, but today when he targeted her lunch and brought up her mom, something inside her had snapped. I told him to stop, she said, her voice small. I told him 3 times. But he just laughed and reached for my container, and I didn't think, Daddy. I just wanted him to leave me alone. Caleb pulled her close. I know, sweetheart, I know. Am I bad? Principal Morrison said violence is never the answer. You're not bad, not even close. But she's right that pushing someone wasn't the best choice, even though I understand why you did it. He tilted her chin up so she'd look at him. When someone hurts us, we want to hurt them back. That's a natural feeling. But the hard part, the brave part, is finding other ways to respond, ways that don't give them the excuse to make you the bad guy. Like what? Like coming to me sooner. Like telling a teacher what was happening. Like walking away and not letting his words have power over you. He wiped her tears with his thumb. I know that's harder than it sounds. I know it feels unfair that you have to be the bigger person when he's being cruel. But the truth is, Bug, life isn't always fair. Sometimes the kids with money and influence get treated differently than kids like us. That doesn't make it right, but it is reality. Lily's lower lip trembled. Why does he get to be mean and nothing happens to him? Because his parents have resources and connections that protect him from consequences. It's wrong, but it's the world we live in. All we can do is control how we respond, how we treat people, who we choose to be even when others are being their worst. She was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she asked in a small voice, Are we poor, Daddy? The question landed like a punch to Caleb's gut. He'd worked so hard to provide for her, to make sure she had everything she needed, but he'd never pretended they lived the way some of her classmates did. We're not poor, he said carefully. We have a home, food, everything we need. But we also don't have extra money for expensive things or fancy vacations. I work hard to give you a good life, but I can't give you everything some other kids have. Does that bother you? Lily shook her head fiercely. No, I don't care about expensive stuff. I don't want other kids to think we're less than them because we don't have as much money. Listen to me. Caleb made sure she was looking at him. Anyone who judges your worth by what you own isn't worth impressing. You are kind, smart, creative, and brave. You're curious about the world and compassionate toward people. Those qualities matter infinitely more than designer clothes or fancy lunches. Don't ever let anyone make you feel small because of what you don't have. You are enough exactly as you are. She hugged him tightly. I love you, Daddy. I love you too, Bug. More than anything in this world. They stayed like that for a while, and Caleb felt the familiar weight of single parenthood pressing down on him. He was enough for Lily in love and presence, but he couldn't shield her from every cruelty, couldn't protect her from the reality that their modest life would always invite judgment from people like the Whitmores. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a text from Victoria. They'd been texting occasionally throughout the week, nothing inappropriate, just small check-ins that had become part of his routine. The text read, "Heard you left early. Everything okay?" He stared at the message, debating how much to share. Then he thought about vulnerability, about trust, about the fact that Victoria had shown up at his door broken and honest, and he'd helped her. Maybe it was okay to need help too. He typed back, "Issue at Lily's school. She's suspended for 3 days. Long story." The response came immediately. "I'm sorry. That must be stressful. Anything I can do?" Caleb almost wrote back, "No, but thanks." The automatic deflection he'd perfected over years of handling everything alone. Instead, he paused and let himself be honest. "Actually, would you mind if I called you later? After Lily's in bed? Could use someone to talk to." "Of course. Anytime." That evening, after Lily had exhausted herself with tears and fallen asleep early, Caleb sat on his small balcony and dialed Victoria's number. She answered on the second ring. "Hey," she said softly. "How are you holding up?" And just like that, the dam broke. Caleb found himself telling her everything. Marcus's bullying, Lily's response, the suspension, Principal Morrison's calculation that money mattered more than justice, his daughter's heartbreaking question about whether they were poor. Victoria listened without interrupting, and when he finished, her voice was tight with anger. "That's completely unacceptable. The school is basically teaching these kids that wealth determines worth." "I know, but what can I do? I'm one parent going up against a system designed to protect people like the Whitmores." "You're not just one parent, Caleb. You're a father fighting for his daughter's dignity. That counts for something." She paused. "What's the son's name again?" "Marcus Whitmore." "Yeah, why?" "Just curious. And the school is Oakwood Elementary?" "Victoria, what are you thinking?" "Nothing. Just gathering information." But there was something in her tone that made Caleb nervous. "Please don't do anything that would make this worse. I can't afford to antagonize these people." "I'm not going to make it worse. I promise." She changed the subject. "How's Lily doing now?" "Asleep, emotionally exhausted. I think she's more upset about disappointing me than about the suspension." "Does she know you're not disappointed?" "I told her, multiple times, but she's 8. She still thinks everything is her fault." He leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the city lights. "I hate that she's learning these lessons so young, that people will judge her based on what we don't have, that the world isn't fair. Those are hard lessons, but she's learning them with a father who loves her unconditionally and fights for her. That matters more than you know." Caleb felt emotion tighten his throat. "How do you always know the right thing to say?" "I don't. I'm just telling you what I wish someone had told my mother when I was being bullied for wearing thrift store clothes and bringing free lunch tickets." Victoria's voice softened. "Kids can be cruel, and systems can be unjust, but Lily has something I didn't have. A parent who's completely present and fighting for her. She's going to be okay, Caleb. Better than okay." They talked for another hour, the conversation drifting from the school situation to lighter topics. Victoria told him about a disastrous board meeting where one of the directors had accidentally unmuted himself, and everyone had heard him complaining about her leadership. Caleb shared stories about Lily's early years, the chaos and joy of single parenthood. "I don't know how you do it," Victoria said. Work full-time and raise a kid alone. It seems impossible. Some days it is impossible, but you find a way because the alternative isn't acceptable. He paused. Although I'll admit, having someone to talk to about it helps. I've been handling everything alone for so long that I forgot how much easier it is when you can share the weight. I'm glad I can help, even if it's just listening. It's more than just listening. He struggled to find the words. You're becoming important to us. To me and Lily both. I hope you know that. The silence on the other end stretched long enough that Caleb worried he'd said too much. Then Victoria spoke, her voice rough with emotion. That terrifies me and makes me happier than I've been in years, both at the same time. I know the feeling. Caleb, I should tell you something about why I asked about Marcus in the school. His stomach tightened. What did you do? Nothing yet. But Marcus's father, Robert Whitmore, runs Whitmore Capital. They're one of our potential investors for the expansion project I've been working on. We have a meeting scheduled for next week. Victoria, no, you can't jeopardize a business deal because of... I'm not jeopardizing anything. I'm just saying that Robert Whitmore is about to learn that the people he associates with, the values he's teaching his son, they matter. They have consequences. Please don't risk your company for us. I'm not risking anything. I'm making a choice about who I want to do business with. There's a difference. She took a breath. Besides, you were right when you said that money shouldn't buy different rules. If I'm building a company, I want it to stand for something more than just profit. And I can't stand for equity and fairness in my business while ignoring injustice when I see it in my personal life. Caleb didn't know what to say. Part of him was grateful, moved by her willingness to use her influence on their behalf. But another part was terrified of the potential fallout, of becoming someone else's burden, of Victoria resenting them if this cost her something important. I don't want you to sacrifice your business for us, he said finally. I'm not sacrificing anything. I'm choosing my priorities. There's a difference. Her voice softened. Let me do this, Caleb. Let me be someone who shows up for you the way you showed up for me. He closed his eyes, feeling the careful walls he'd built around his life continuing to crumble. Okay, but promise me you'll be careful. I can't have Lily's situation getting worse because of this. I promise. Trust me? Yeah, he said quietly. I trust you. After they hung up, Caleb sat on the balcony for a long time, watching the city breathe and pulse below him. 3 weeks ago, Victoria had been just his untouchable CEO. Now she was someone who knew his daughter's favorite pizza toppings, who listened to his parenting struggles, who was willing to use her power to defend them. The shift was exhilarating and terrifying in equal measure. The next morning, Caleb called his supervisor to explain he needed to work from home for the next 3 days due to Lily's suspension. He didn't mention the reason for the suspension, just that there had been a school incident. His supervisor, a practical woman named Maria, told him to do what he needed to do and keep his phone on for urgent matters. Lily woke up subdued and quiet, the weight of her suspension heavy on her small shoulders. Caleb tried to keep the day normal, breakfast, some educational activities, lunch together, but he could see her withdrawing, pulling into herself in a way that worried him. Around 2 in the afternoon, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Reed, this is Robert Whitmore. Marcus's father. Caleb's grip tightened on the phone. Mr. Whitmore? I'm calling to discuss yesterday's incident between our children. I think we got off on the wrong foot, and I'd like to resolve this situation amicably. There was something in the man's tone that immediately put Caleb on guard. Too smooth, too practiced. This wasn't about amicable resolution. This was damage control. I'm listening, Caleb said carefully. Marcus has told us his version of events, and while I understand children can exaggerate, it seems there was some provocation on both sides. I'm willing to speak with the school about reducing Lily's suspension if you're willing to agree that this matter is settled and requires no further action from either family. Translation: stop making trouble and we'll make your daughter's punishment go away. What kind of further action were you concerned about? Caleb asked, already knowing the answer. Well, you know how these situations can escalate. Parents get emotional, start talking to lawyers, filing complaints. I'd hate to see this turn into something that damages both our children's educational experiences. There it was, the veiled threat. Agree to silence or face legal and social consequences that Caleb couldn't afford to fight. Every instinct in Caleb wanted to tell Robert Whitmore exactly what he thought of his parenting, his privilege, his assumption that money could solve problems created by teaching his son that cruelty had no consequences. But he also knew that picking this fight could hurt Lily more than help her. I appreciate the call, Mr. Whitmore, but I don't think we need any intervention with the school. Lily accepts her suspension and understands the importance of using her words instead of physical force. I hope Marcus is also learning some lessons about treating people with respect, regardless of their circumstances. The subtle dig landed. Robert Whitmore's voice cooled noticeably. I'm sure I don't know what you mean. I'm sure you do. But yes, as far as I'm concerned, this matter is settled. No further action needed. Excellent. I'm glad we could come to an understanding. After Whitmore hung up, Caleb felt sick. He just let a bully and his bully father walk away with no real consequences, had basically agreed to pretend the injustice hadn't happened. But what choice did he have? Going to war with people like the Whitmores was a luxury he couldn't afford. That evening, Victoria arrived for their Thursday pizza night despite the chaos of the week. She came bearing not just food, but also a large bag from a bookstore. I thought maybe Lily could use some new reading material during her unexpected time off, Victoria explained as Lily tore into the bag with the first genuine excitement Caleb had seen from her all day. Inside were 6 books, each carefully selected for Lily's age and interests. Books about brave girls and scientific discoveries and adventure stories where the heroes won through intelligence and kindness rather than force. These are perfect, Lily breathed, already opening one. Thank you, Victoria. You're welcome, sweetheart. I thought we could read one together after dinner if you wanted. As they ate pizza and Lily animatedly discussed the new books, Caleb caught Victoria's eye and mouthed, "Thank you." She smiled and shrugged as if showing up for them was the most natural thing in the world. Later, after Lily was absorbed in one of her new books, Victoria and Caleb stood in the kitchen while he cleaned up. "Robert Whitmore called me today," Caleb said quietly. Victoria's hands stilled on the dish she was drying. "What did he say?" Caleb explained the conversation, the veiled threats, his decision to let it go. Victoria listened with an expression that grew increasingly tense. "He tried to buy your silence," she said flatly. "Essentially. And I let him because fighting would hurt Lily more. You did what you had to do to protect your daughter. That's not the same as letting him win." Victoria set down the dish. "But he doesn't get to walk away from this without consequences." Victoria, "Our meeting with Whitmore Capital is tomorrow. I've spent the last 24 hours reviewing their proposal and doing some research into their business practices." Her expression was cold in a way Caleb had never seen. They have a pattern of investing in companies, stripping assets, and leaving communities devastated. Their profit margins are built on exploiting people who can't fight back. Exactly the kind of partner I don't want for my company. You're turning them down? I was already leaning that way before I knew about Marcus, but now, absolutely. I won't do business with someone who teaches his son that money buys different rules. She met Caleb's eyes. I know you're worried about me sacrificing my business for personal reasons, but this isn't personal. This is about integrity. If my company doesn't stand for something beyond profit, what's the point? Caleb felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that this woman was genuinely extraordinary. Not because of her success or her power, but because she was willing to use both in service of her values. Thank you, he said quietly, for caring enough to do this. Thank me by letting me keep coming here on Thursday nights. Let me keep being part of this. She gestured at the small apartment, at Lily curled up on the couch, at the life they'd built. This matters more to me than any business deal ever could. And in that moment, standing in his tiny kitchen with dishes in the sink and children's books scattered across the counter, Caleb felt something he'd been fighting for weeks finally settle into certainty. Whatever this was between them, friendship, partnership, something more, it was real and worth protecting. The news about Victoria's decision reached Caleb in the most unexpected way, through office gossip 2 days later when he returned to work. He was refilling his coffee mug in the break room when he overheard 2 colleagues from the business development team talking in hushed, excited voices. Did you hear Hale turn down Whitmore Capital? Apparently told them their business practices didn't align with our company values. They were offering a $15 million investment. $15 million? She walked away from $15 million over values? That's either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. Caleb's hand froze on the coffee pot. $15 million. Victoria had sacrificed $15 million, and she'd made it sound like it was nothing, like it was just another business decision. He set down his mug and walked directly to his desk, pulling up his email to send her a message. Then he stopped, remembering their agreement about maintaining professional boundaries at work. This wasn't a conversation for corporate email. Instead, he sent a text to her personal phone. 15 million? Shay. Her response came an hour later. Worth it. Trust me. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she'd done too much, sacrificed too much. But he also understood that this was her choice to make, her line to draw in the sand about what kind of leader she wanted to be. That evening, after he'd picked up Lily from her first day back at school, she'd been quiet but seemed okay. His phone rang with Victoria's number. "Hey," she said, and he could hear traffic in the background. "Are you home? Can I come over?" "It's not Thursday." "I know, but I wanted to talk to you and it couldn't wait until next week. Is that okay? I can come later if now's not a good time." Caleb glanced at Lily, who was setting up a board game on the coffee table. "Now's fine. Come over." She arrived 20 minutes later, still in her work clothes but with her heels swapped for flats, her hair starting to escape its professional bun. When Lily saw her, she lit up with genuine happiness. "Victoria, are you staying for dinner?" "If your dad doesn't mind the intrusion." "Never an intrusion," Caleb said, meaning it. "We were just going to do grilled cheese and tomato soup, nothing fancy." "Sounds perfect." As Caleb cooked, Victoria sat at the breakfast bar while Lily told her about her first day back at school. Marcus Whitmore had apparently been moved to a different lunch period as promised, and several of Lily's friends had told her they thought what happened was unfair. "My friend Mia said her mom told her that sometimes standing up to bullies means you get in trouble, but that doesn't make it wrong," Lily reported. "Is that true?" Victoria exchanged a glance with Caleb before answering. "Sometimes, yes. Sometimes doing the right thing has consequences, especially when the person you're standing up to has power, or money, or connections. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means you have to be smart about how you do it." "Like how?" "Like using your voice instead of your hands. Like telling people what's happening so they can help. Like making sure the people who care about you know what you're facing so you're not fighting alone." Victoria's expression was gentle but serious. "The world isn't always fair, Lily, but we make it a little bit fairer every time we refuse to accept cruelty as normal." Lily absorbed this with the gravity she applied to all important lessons, then nodded. "I'm going to tell a teacher next time instead of pushing, but I'm still going to stand up for myself." "Good. That's exactly right." Over dinner, the conversation stayed light, but Caleb could sense Victoria had something on her mind. After Lily finished eating and asked to be excused to work on homework, Victoria helped clear the table and then turned to Caleb with an expression he couldn't quite read. "Can we talk? On your balcony, maybe?" Outside, with the city sounds humming below them and the evening air cool against their skin, Victoria leaned against the railing and seemed to gather her thoughts. Caleb waited, giving her space. "I need to tell you something about the Whitmore deal," she finally said, "and I need you to hear the whole story before you get angry or tell me I did too much." "Okay." "When I said I turned them down because their business practices didn't align with our values, that was true. But it wasn't the whole truth." She met his eyes. "The whole truth is that when I researched their company, I found out they've been investigated twice for predatory lending practices, and once for discriminatory hiring. They've been sued by former employees for creating hostile work environments. And Robert Whitmore himself has a history of using his wealth and connections to make problems disappear." Caleb felt his stomach tighten. "So turning them down was the right decision regardless." "Yes, but I wouldn't have looked that closely if not for what happened with Lily. And when I met with Robert yesterday to decline the investment, I told him exactly why. I told him that a company is built on values, and those values start with how we treat people, especially people with less power than us. I told him that I'd learned his son was bullying a child at school, and that while children make mistakes, parents teach values. And I said I couldn't partner with someone whose values clearly prioritized money over basic human decency. Victoria, I'm not done. Her voice was steady but intense. He tried to dismiss it, said I was being emotional and letting personal feelings interfere with business. So I told him that caring about people isn't a weakness or an emotional indulgence. It's actually the foundation of sustainable business. And then I suggested that maybe he should spend less time teaching his son that wealth buys different rules, and more time teaching him that character matters more than capital. Caleb stared at her, torn between admiration and concern. What did he say? He told me I'd regret turning down his investment, that I was making an enemy I couldn't afford. I told him I'd rather have enemies I chose than partners I couldn't respect. She smiled, but it was tight. Then I left, and my CFO spent the next hour explaining all the ways I'd potentially damaged our funding prospects. Jesus, Victoria. I know. I know it was risky and possibly stupid, and definitely something my board is going to question. But Caleb, I meant what I said about integrity mattering. And I couldn't look at Lily, couldn't come here on Thursday nights and pretend to care about your family while doing business with someone who taught his son that people like you don't matter. Caleb turned away from her, gripping the railing, trying to process the enormity of what she'd done. $15 million. Potential business relationships. Her company's financial future. All sacrificed because she'd chosen to fight for them, to draw a line based on principle rather than profit. You shouldn't have done that, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, I should have, and I'd do it again. She moved closer, not touching him, but near enough that he could feel her presence. I've spent 15 years building a company while telling myself that business and personal life had to stay separate, that emotions and ethics were different categories. But the truth is, everything is personal. Every decision I make reflects who I am and what I stand for. And I don't want to stand for the kind of world where Marcus Whitmore learns that money matters more than decency. Caleb turned to face her, and the intensity in her eyes took his breath away. This wasn't just about Lily or about proving a point. This was about Victoria choosing the kind of person she wanted to be, the kind of life she wanted to build. Thank you, he said quietly, for caring enough to take that risk. You don't need to thank me for doing the right thing. Yes, I do, because most people wouldn't have. Most people would have kept business and personal separate, would have taken the $15 million and convinced themselves it didn't matter. He took a careful step closer. But you're not most people. Something shifted in the air between them, the tension that had been building for weeks suddenly crystallizing into something undeniable. Victoria's breath caught, and for a moment Caleb thought she might close the distance between them. Instead, she stepped back, creating space. I need to be careful here, she said, her voice unsteady. Because being around you, being part of your life with Lily, it's making me want things I've convinced myself I couldn't have. And I don't want to rush this or mess it up or... I know. I feel the same way. Do you? She searched his face. Because you seem so sure about everything, so steady and certain. And I'm terrified that I'm going to ruin this by wanting too much, too fast, or by not knowing how to be the kind of person who fits into your life. Caleb almost laughed at the irony. Victoria, I'm not sure or steady. I'm scared every single day that I'm going to mess up Lily's life, that I'm not enough, that letting you in is going to end badly and hurt the person I love most in the world. The only thing I'm certain about is that you make me want to be brave enough to try anyway. Her eyes glistened. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm too damaged or too focused on work or too, you're already what we need? You show up. You care. You treat Lily like she matters. You use your power to fight for people who can't fight for themselves. He paused. That's more than enough. Victoria wiped at her eyes impatiently. I'm going to cry, and I hate crying. It's okay to cry. It means you're feeling something real. She laughed wetly. When did you become so wise about feelings? I'm not wise. I'm just honest about being terrified. He offered a small smile. And I've had a very patient 8-year-old teaching me that vulnerability isn't weakness. They stood there for a long moment, the city lights spreading out below them, the weight of everything acknowledged between them. Finally, Victoria spoke again. I don't want to just be someone who comes for pizza on Thursday nights. I want to be part of your life in a real way. But I also know that means being patient, moving at a pace that protects Lily, maintaining boundaries at work. She took a shaky breath. Can we do that? Can we build something real while being careful? Yes, Caleb said without hesitation. We can try. Even though it's complicated and risky, and possibly the most unprofessional thing either of us has ever done? Especially because of that. The best things usually are complicated and risky. Victoria closed the small distance between them and took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. The touch was simple, innocent even, but it felt monumental. This was a choice, an acknowledgement, a step forward into uncertain territory. I'm going to mess this up sometimes, she warned. I'm going to work too much, or say the wrong thing, or not understand what Lily needs. I'm going to be learning as I go. So am I. We'll mess up together and figure it out as we go. He squeezed her hand gently. But we'll do it honestly, and we'll always put Lily first. Deal? Deal. They stayed on the balcony talking until the air grew cold and they could hear Lily calling from inside that she needed help with her math homework. As they came back in, Lily looked at their joined hands with wide, knowing eyes. Are you and Victoria dating now, Daddy? Caleb felt his face heat, but before he could fumble an answer, Victoria crouched down to Lily's level, still holding his hand. Your dad and I really like spending time together, and we're going to keep doing that. But we're taking it slow because you're the most important person in his life, and we want to make sure any changes are good for all of us. Does that make sense? Lily considered this seriously. So you're going to keep coming for pizza nights? Definitely, if that's okay with you. It's okay with me. I like you. Lily paused. But if you hurt my daddy's feelings, I'm going to be really mad. Victoria's expression went soft. That's fair. And if I ever do hurt his feelings, which I'll try my very best not to, you should absolutely be mad and tell me I messed up. Deal? Deal. Lily held out her hand for a solemn handshake, which Victoria accepted with equal gravity. After Victoria left that night, Lily climbed into Caleb's lap on the couch, something she only did when she had important things to discuss. She's good for you, Daddy. What makes you say that? You smile more when she's here, and you don't look so tired. Lily played with the button on his shirt. I know you take care of me all by yourself, but it's okay if you want someone to help. I'm not a baby anymore. Caleb's throat tightened with love for his perceptive, generous daughter. You're growing up so fast, Bug. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just don't notice because I'm short. He laughed and hugged her close, marveling at how his life had transformed in just a few weeks. The careful isolation he'd maintained for years was dissolving, replaced by something terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. The next few weeks established a new rhythm. Thursday nights remained sacred, pizza, puzzles, an increasingly comfortable conversation as Victoria became a fixture in their small apartment. But they also started finding other moments. Saturday morning trips to the farmer's market where Lily would drag Victoria from stall to stall, explaining the difference between heirloom tomatoes and regular ones. Sunday afternoons at the park where Victoria proved surprisingly competitive at Frisbee. Quiet evenings after Lily's bedtime when Victoria would come over and they'd talk on the balcony, slowly learning each other's histories and hopes. At work, they maintained strict professionalism. No personal conversations, no meaningful glances, no hint that they were anything other than CEO and senior accountant. It was harder than Caleb expected, seeing Victoria command a meeting with brilliant authority and knowing that later she'd sit on his floor helping Lily build an elaborate blanket fort. 2 months after that first knock on his door, Caleb's life felt fuller and scarier than it had in years. He was happy in a way he'd almost forgotten was possible, but he was also waiting for the other shoe to drop. Happiness this good, this unexpected, couldn't last without complications. The complication arrived on a Wednesday afternoon in the form of an email from HR requesting Caleb's presence for a meeting the next morning. No explanation, just a calendar invite that made his stomach drop. He immediately thought of Victoria, of their careful navigation of company policy, of the inevitable discovery that they'd crossed professional lines. He texted her. Did you get called to HR? Her response was immediate. No, what's this about? Not sure. Meeting tomorrow at 10. I'm worried they found out about us. There's nothing to find out. We haven't done anything inappropriate at work. But we're dating. You're my boss. That's grounds for conflict of interest, even if we've kept it completely professional here. She didn't respond immediately, and Caleb could picture her weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, don't panic yet. It might be something completely unrelated, but if it is about us, we'll handle it together. Promise. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, imagining worst-case scenarios. Getting fired, Victoria facing professional consequences, the whole office learning about their relationship and judging them, Lily asking why he wasn't going to work anymore. At 2:30 a.m., his phone buzzed with a text from Victoria. "Can't sleep either. Want company?" He almost said no, worried about setting precedents or crossing lines. Then he thought about vulnerability and trust, and the fact that facing fears alone was exactly what he'd been doing for 6 years before she knocked on his door. "Yes, come over." She arrived 15 minutes later in sweatpants and an oversized sweater, her hair in a messy bun, looking nothing like the polished executive the world usually saw. Caleb let her in, and they sat on the couch in the dim light from the kitchen, close but not touching. "Tell me what you're afraid of," she said quietly. "Losing my job. Losing you. Lily asking questions I don't know how to answer. Everyone at work thinking I used our relationship for professional gain. You regretting this whole thing when it becomes complicated and public." He paused. "Pick whichever one scares you most. They all terrify me equally." Victoria reached for his hand. "You're not going to lose your job. I won't let that happen. And you're definitely not losing me. I'm way too invested in finishing that solar system puzzle. As for Lily, we'll answer her questions together, honestly, the way we've been doing. And I don't care what anyone at work thinks because I know the truth. We've been professional and careful, and we're both adults capable of separating personal and professional relationships. What if HR disagrees? Then we'll deal with it. But Caleb, listen to me." She shifted to face him fully. "Even if this meeting tomorrow is about us, even if there are consequences, I don't regret any of this. Not the Thursday nights or the farmers markets or the fact that I've fallen completely in love with your daughter." And she stopped abruptly, her eyes widening. Caleb's heart stopped. "And?" Victoria looked terrified, but she didn't retreat. "And with you. I've fallen in love with you, Caleb, completely and terrifyingly and irrevocably. And I know it's too soon to say that, and maybe it's not what you want to hear, and the timing is terrible with this HR thing, but I can't sit here listening to you list all your fears without telling you the truth. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever complications come, I'm not going anywhere, not unless you want me to." The words hung in the air between them, vulnerable and brave, and exactly what Caleb needed to hear. He'd been so focused on protecting himself and Lily from potential hurt that he'd been holding back the feelings growing in his chest. But Victoria's honesty demanded his own. "I love you too," he said, and watched her face transform with hope and relief. "I've been trying not to, trying to be careful and rational and protective. But somewhere between you showing up broken at my door and you telling off Robert Whitmore and you helping Lily understand that standing up for yourself matters more than avoiding consequences, I fell in love with you. And it terrifies me because I have so much to lose, but it also feels like the most honest thing I've felt in years." Victoria's smile was tremulous and beautiful. "So we're doing this? Actually doing this? Even though it's complicated and risky and might blow up our professional lives tomorrow?" "Yeah, we're doing this." He pulled her close, and she came willingly, tucking herself against his chest. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet apartment while the city slept around them. When Victoria finally pulled back, her eyes were wet, but her expression was determined. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we face it together. And we figure out how to protect what we've built, all three of us." "Together," Caleb agreed. She left before sunrise, and Caleb managed a few hours of restless sleep before his alarm went off. As he got Lily ready for school and prepared himself for the HR meeting, he felt steadier than he had the night before. Not because the fear was gone, but because he wasn't facing it alone anymore. At exactly 10 o'clock, Caleb walked into the HR office with his shoulders back and his head high. Whatever was coming, he was ready to face it. He had too much worth protecting to do anything else. The HR director, a woman named Patricia Chen, who Caleb had only ever seen from a distance at company events, gestured for him to sit. Her expression was professionally neutral, revealing nothing, and Caleb's stomach churned as he settled into the chair across from her desk. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Reed. I know the lack of context in my email probably caused some concern, and I apologize for that." Patricia folded her hands on her desk. "I wanted to speak with you about a promotion opportunity that's become available." Caleb blinked, certain he'd misheard. "A promotion?" "Yes. We're creating a new position, Director of Financial Operations. It would involve overseeing the accounting department, working directly with the executive team on strategic planning, and leading our financial transparency initiatives. Your supervisor, Maria, recommended you specifically, and your performance reviews have been consistently excellent." Patricia slid a folder across the desk. "The full job description is here, along with the compensation package. The position would come with a significant salary increase and expanded benefits." Caleb stared at the folder like it might explode. This was the opposite of what he'd been expecting. "I don't understand. I turned down a promotion 6 months ago because of travel requirements." "We remember. Which is why this position is specifically designed to be based here, minimal travel, with flexible scheduling options. We're trying to build leadership that reflects our values around work-life balance." Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Ms. Hale has been pushing for structural changes that allow talented employees to advance without sacrificing their personal lives. This position is part of that initiative. Ms. Hale, Victoria." Caleb felt a complicated mix of gratitude and concern. Was this because of their relationship, or was it genuinely about his qualifications? "Can I ask why this position is being created now?" "Ms. Hale believes that financial transparency and ethical operations should be cornerstones of our company culture. She wants leadership that shares those values and can help implement them across all levels. Your name came up repeatedly in those discussions." Patricia paused. "I should mention that accepting this promotion would change your reporting structure. You'd be reporting directly to the CFO rather than to Ms. Hale, which actually reduces potential conflicts of interest." There it was, the acknowledgement that someone knew or suspected something about his relationship with Victoria. Caleb met Patricia's eyes directly. "Is there something you want to ask me?" Patricia's smile was knowing but not unkind. "Mr. Reed, I've been in HR for 20 years. I've seen every variation of workplace relationship imaginable. What I care about is whether people are professional, whether there's any abuse of power, and whether company policy is being followed. From everything I've observed, you and Ms. Hale have maintained exemplary professional boundaries at work. What you do outside of work, as long as it doesn't create conflicts here, isn't my concern." "So you know." "I suspect. There's a difference." She leaned back in her chair. "And if my suspicions are correct, this promotion actually solves a potential problem by removing the direct reporting relationship. But that's not why we're offering it. We're offering it because you're qualified, because Maria speaks highly of your leadership abilities, and because this company needs people with integrity in positions of influence." Caleb opened the folder, scanning the job description and salary information. The compensation was nearly double what he currently made, enough to move to a better apartment, to build a real college fund for Lily, to stop worrying quite so much about every unexpected expense. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. We'd need an answer by the end of next week." Patricia stood, signaling the meeting was over. "For what it's worth, Mr. Reed, I hope you accept. We need more leaders who understand that success isn't just about profit margins. It's about building something sustainable and ethical." As Caleb left the HR office, his mind was spinning. He wanted to call Victoria immediately, to ask if she'd orchestrated this, to understand what it meant for them. But he also knew that conversation needed to happen in person, not over the phone where anyone might overhear. He made it through the rest of the workday on autopilot, his concentration shattered by the weight of the decision before him. When 5 o'clock finally arrived, he texted Victoria, "Can we talk tonight, after Lily's asleep?" Her response was immediate, "I'll be there at 8. At home, Caleb went through the evening routine with Lily, but she noticed his distraction almost immediately. "What's wrong, Daddy? You seem weird." "Just thinking about some work stuff. Nothing bad, just big." "Is it about Victoria?" He looked at his daughter, struck again by her perceptiveness. "Sort of. How would you feel if Victoria was around more? Like, not just Thursday nights, but other times too?" Lily's face lit up. Like she'd be your girlfriend officially? Maybe. Would that be okay with you? Daddy, I already told you she's good for you, and she makes really good puzzle choices. Plus, she listens when I talk about science and doesn't pretend to understand when she doesn't. Lily climbed into his lap. I like her, a lot. And I think you like her a lot too. So, yes, it's okay with me. Caleb hugged his daughter close, marveling at how something that felt so complicated to him seemed so simple to her. You're pretty amazing, you know that? I know. Now, can we have ice cream before bed since this is a big decision day? He laughed despite his anxiety. Sure, Bug, ice cream it is. Victoria arrived at exactly 8 o'clock, and the moment Caleb saw her face, he knew she was as nervous as he was. They settled on the balcony, their usual spot for important conversations, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Finally, Caleb broke the silence. Did you create that director position for me? Victoria's expression was complicated, part guilt, part defiance, part something else he couldn't name. Yes and no. I've been planning to create that position for months as part of restructuring our financial operations. The company needs it, and it makes strategic sense. But did I accelerate the timeline and make sure the job description aligned with your qualifications and constraints? Yes, I did. Why? Because you deserve it. Because you're exactly the kind of leader this company needs. And because, she paused, choosing her words carefully, because I meant what I said about using my power for good. That includes making sure talented people aren't overlooked because they don't fit traditional career trajectories. You turned down a promotion before because it required sacrificing time with Lily. I wanted to create an opportunity that didn't force you to choose. And it has nothing to do with us, with removing the reporting relationship so we can be together without complications. That's a beneficial side effect, but it's not why I did it. Victoria met his eyes. Caleb, I can't promote you just because we're together. That would be unethical and unfair to everyone else. But I can make sure the company creates positions that recognize different definitions of success. And if that happens to also solve a personal problem for us, that's just good planning. Caleb wanted to believe her, wanted to accept the promotion without guilt or doubt, but he also knew how this would look to others. People are going to think I got this because of our relationship. They're going to say I slept my way to a promotion. Let them. We'll know the truth. Victoria's voice was fierce. You've worked at this company for 3 years with stellar performance reviews. You've turned down advancement opportunities to prioritize your daughter. You've demonstrated integrity and competence repeatedly. If people want to reduce that to nepotism, that says more about them than about you. It's easy for you to say that. You're the CEO. You don't have to worry about office politics or people questioning your qualifications. Victoria flinched. You think I don't deal with people questioning my qualifications? I'm a woman CEO in a male-dominated industry. I get questioned constantly about my decisions, my leadership, my right to be in the room. The difference is I've learned to stop letting other people's doubts determine my choices. She was right, and Caleb knew it. He'd been so focused on protecting himself from judgment that he'd forgotten Victoria faced her own battles against assumption and prejudice. I'm scared, he admitted. Scared of accepting and having it blow up in my face. Scared of turning it down and resenting you for putting me in this position. Scared that no matter what I choose, it's going to complicate things between us. Victoria moved closer, taking his hands. Then let's uncomplicate it. Forget about us for a moment. Forget about what people might think or say. Just answer one question. Do you want this job? Does it align with your career goals and your values? Would it let you provide better for Lily while still being present in her life? Caleb closed his eyes, forcing himself to be honest. Yes, it's exactly what I've wanted, but didn't think I could have. A leadership role that doesn't require me to sacrifice my time with Lily, the chance to influence company culture and push for ethical practices, the financial security to give Lily more opportunities. Then take it. Accept the promotion because it's right for you and your daughter, not because of me, and know that whether you accept or not, it doesn't change how I feel about you or our relationship. What if I fail? What if I'm not ready for that level of responsibility? Then you'll learn and grow, the same way everyone does. But Caleb, you're one of the most capable, ethical, thoughtful people I know. You won't fail. She squeezed his hands. And if you do struggle sometimes, that's what support systems are for. You don't have to do everything alone anymore. The words settled something in Caleb's chest. He'd been operating under the assumption that accepting help or opportunity from Victoria meant he was weak or dependent. But maybe it just meant he was finally learning to be part of a partnership, to share both burdens and benefits. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll accept it." Victoria's smile was radiant. "Yeah? Yeah. But we need to be really careful about how we navigate this. I can't have people thinking I'm getting special treatment because we're together." "Agreed. Which is why I've already talked to Patricia about establishing clear boundaries. You'll report to the CFO, not to me. Any decisions affecting your department will go through proper channels. And at work, we maintain complete professionalism." She paused. "But here, in this space, we can be ourselves. Deal?" "Deal." They sealed it with a kiss, their first real kiss, soft and tentative and full of promise. When they pulled apart, Victoria was crying, and Caleb brushed the tears away gently. "Happy tears?" he asked. "The happiest. I never thought I could have this. Real connection, genuine partnership, a family that chose me instead of being obligated to me." She laughed wetly. "3 months ago, I was standing in your hallway at 4 in the morning thinking my life was over. And now I'm here, and I'm happier than I've ever been." "Me too. Terrified, but happy." They stayed on the balcony talking until nearly midnight, making plans for how to navigate their new reality. Caleb would accept the promotion on Monday. They'd continue keeping their relationship private for now, at least at work, until the new position was established and any appearance of impropriety was eliminated. Thursday nights would remain their anchor, but they'd also start building something bigger. Real dates, family outings, the gradual integration of their lives. Over the next few weeks, the transition happened more smoothly than Caleb had dared hope. He accepted the promotion, and while there was some office gossip, most of his colleagues seemed genuinely pleased for him. Maria, his former supervisor, told him she'd been pushing for his advancement for months and was thrilled to see it finally happen. The new position was challenging but fulfilling in ways his previous job hadn't been. Caleb found himself working directly with executive leadership on initiatives that aligned with his values: financial transparency, ethical investment practices, employee benefit improvements. He discovered he was good at leadership, at building consensus, at pushing for change while respecting established processes. And through it all, Victoria was there, not as his boss anymore, but as his partner. They were careful at work, maintaining professional distance, but outside the office, their relationship deepened with every passing week. 3 months into his new role, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Caleb woke to find Lily bouncing on his bed with unusual excitement. "Daddy, Daddy, wake up! Victoria's here and she brought pancakes and she says we're going on an adventure today." Caleb groaned, checking his clock. 7:30 in the morning. On a Saturday, he stumbled out of bed to find Victoria in his kitchen, indeed making pancakes, looking completely at home in his space. "You have a key now?" he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. She grinned. "You gave me one last week, remember? After I complained about always having to knock." He did remember, though he'd been half asleep at the time. The fact that Victoria now had unlimited access to his apartment, that she felt comfortable enough to show up on Saturday mornings and make breakfast, felt both surreal and exactly right. "What's this about an adventure?" "It's a surprise, but you need to eat first, and then we need to get Lily ready. Dress casual, layers, comfortable shoes." "You're being very mysterious." "I'm being romantic. There's a difference." She flipped a pancake expertly. "Now sit down and let me feed you before we go." An hour later, they were in Victoria's car, a sleek hybrid that Lily had proclaimed fancy but not showing off fancy, driving out of the city. Lily chattered from the back seat, making Victoria laugh with her observations about cloud shapes and highway signs. Caleb watched them interact and felt his chest expand with a happiness so complete it almost scared him. They ended up at a state park 2 hours outside the city, one Caleb had never visited. Victoria led them on a hiking trail that wound through old-growth forest, and when they reached a clearing with a stunning view of a waterfall, she spread out a blanket and unpacked an elaborate picnic. "How long have you been planning this?" Caleb asked, accepting a sandwich. 2 weeks. "I wanted to do something special. something that was just for us. No work, no stress, just time together. She smiled at Lily, who was exploring the edge of the clearing. I thought maybe we could start making this a regular thing, monthly adventures, building memories. I'd like that. After lunch, while Lily was absorbed in collecting interesting rocks, Victoria pulled a small wrapped box from her bag and handed it to Caleb. What's this? Open it. Inside was a key. Not to an apartment or a car, but something older, more ornate. Attached to it was a note that read, "To new beginnings and the courage to keep building." I don't understand. Victoria's expression was nervous and excited in equal measure. There's a house about 40 minutes from here, close enough to the city for your commute, but with space and a yard and good schools. It's been on the market for a while because it needs work, but it has potential, and the price is reasonable. I thought maybe, if you wanted, we could look at it together. Not as me buying you a house, she added quickly, seeing his expression shift, but as us potentially investing in something together, building something that's ours. Caleb stared at the key, his mind racing. A house, a future. The word ours echoing with implications that both thrilled and terrified him. Victoria, that's a huge step. I know. And if it's too much too soon, that's okay. We can wait. But Caleb, I'm not going anywhere. I want a future with you and Lily. I want to build something real and lasting. And I thought maybe having a physical space that represents that commitment might be meaningful. Lily appeared at that moment, her hands full of rocks. What are you guys talking about? Caleb and Victoria exchanged glances, and he made a decision. Victoria found a house she thinks we might like. Want to go look at it? Lily's eyes went wide. A house, like with a yard and maybe room for a dog? Potentially, though we haven't discussed dogs. We're discussing them now, Lily announced. If we get a house, we need a dog. A medium-sized one that's good with kids and likes to play fetch. Victoria laughed. I think that can be arranged. Should we go see the house? The house was everything Victoria had described. A bit worn down, but full of potential, with a wide front porch, a backyard big enough for Lily's imagination, and large windows that filled the rooms with light. Lily raced through it, declaring which room would be hers and where they could put a swing set. Victoria and Caleb walked through more slowly, and he could see her mentally cataloging repairs and improvements. It needs work, he said, standing in what would be the living room. Everything worth having needs work. She slipped her hand into his. But we could do it together, make it exactly what we want instead of settling for something ready-made. Caleb looked around the empty house and saw it filled with possibility. Lily's artwork on the walls. Family dinners around a table big enough for all of them. Victoria reading bedtime stories. A dog sleeping in a patch of sunlight, a life built on choice and commitment rather than convenience or desperation. Let's do it, he said. Let's build something together. Victoria's kiss was answer enough, and when Lily ran back into the room declaring she'd found the perfect spot for a treehouse, they were laughing and crying in equal measure. The next 6 months were a blur of renovations, negotiations, and gradual transition. They didn't rush. Victoria kept her apartment as Caleb and Lily slowly moved into the house, giving everyone time to adjust. They painted Lily's room together, installed the swing set on a sunny Saturday, adopted a golden retriever mix from a shelter that Lily named Galileo. At work, Caleb continued to excel in his new role, and the whispers about favoritism faded as people saw his genuine competence. Victoria announced to the board that she was in a relationship with a company employee, but that all proper protocols had been followed, and while a few eyebrows raised, no one could argue with the results both of them were producing. On a Thursday night, exactly 1 year after Victoria had first knocked on Caleb's apartment door at 4 a.m, they finally finished the solar system puzzle. All 5,000 pieces, assembled over months of patient work, creating a detailed map of the cosmos that they hung in the living room as a reminder of how they'd started. Lily was already asleep upstairs in her new bedroom, Galileo curled at the foot of her bed. Victoria and Caleb stood looking at the completed puzzle, their arms around each other. We did it, Victoria said softly. Yeah, we did. I mean more than just the puzzle. Caleb turned to face her. I know. We built something real. against all odds and despite all the reasons it shouldn't have worked. Do you ever regret it? Opening the door that night? He thought about it seriously, about all the ways his life had transformed since that impossible moment. The fear and uncertainty, the complications and risks, the terrifying vulnerability of letting someone in. And then he thought about the joy, Lily's laughter as Victoria pushed her on the swing, Saturday morning pancakes, the quiet comfort of not facing life's challenges alone. Not for a second, he said. Best decision I ever made was opening that door. Second best, Victoria corrected. First best was saying I could come back. Fair point. They stood in comfortable silence, and Caleb marveled at how far they'd come. A year ago, Victoria had been a broken woman in a hallway, desperate for connection she didn't know how to ask for. He'd been a lonely single father convinced that protecting his daughter meant keeping everyone else at arm's length. Now they were here, in a home they were building together, with a family they'd chosen and a future spreading out before them full of possibility. Thank you, Victoria whispered, for taking a chance on me. Thank you for having the courage to knock. Later, after Victoria had checked on Lily one more time, a ritual she'd adopted with touching dedication, they sat on their new porch watching the stars emerge. Caleb pulled out his phone and showed Victoria something he'd been working on. What's this? Job posting for a deputy director position in my department. I want to hire someone who understands that career advancement shouldn't require sacrificing family. Someone who gets that success means different things to different people. Victoria smiled. You're changing the culture, one position at a time. I learned from the best. She leaned her head on his shoulder. We're going to do good things, Caleb. Build something that matters. Raise an incredible kid. Create a company culture that values people over profit. Make a difference. Yeah, we are. He kissed the top of her head. Together. Somewhere above them, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and Caleb thought about the solar system puzzle hanging in their living room, about how Lily had once said the puzzle pieces probably wanted to go home to their real planets, about how home wasn't a place or a position or a plan. It was the people you chose and who chose you back. A year ago, at exactly 4 in the morning, 3 knocks had shattered his careful isolation. Now, in this house full of love and laughter and second chances, Caleb understood that the best things in life often arrive when you least expect them. Sometimes they come disguised as crisis, as vulnerability, as a desperate woman in a hallway who doesn't know where else to turn. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to open the door, they transform everything. The lights were on in Lily's room when Victoria noticed and went to check. She came back smiling. She's awake, says she can't sleep because she's too excited about tomorrow being Saturday. What's special about Saturday? Apparently we promised to start building the treehouse. Victoria held out her hand. Come on, let's go tell her a story. Something about brave people who take chances and build beautiful things together. Caleb took her hand and let her lead him inside, into the warmth of their home, into the life they were creating one choice at a time. And as Lily called out asking for the story about the stars and the puzzle pieces that found their way home, Caleb realized that his own story, once defined by loss and loneliness, had been rewritten into something he'd never dared imagine. It was a story about courage and vulnerability, about opening doors and taking risks, about building families from choice rather than obligation. It was a story about finding home not in the safety of isolation, but in the terrifying beauty of connection. And it was, without question, the best story he'd ever been part of.